EGM Network.
Honestly, without Treasure Coast Community Health, I think we'd be a much poorer community in terms of our health. We're always striving to fill the gap for everyone in the community, rich or poor.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Community Conversations. So glad to have you join us again today because we have another wonderful guest to have a conversation with. I don't know how else to explain this except that healthcare is certainly the business that Treasure Coast Community Health provides as a service. But the reality is that as a nonprofit, we belong to a league of wonderful colleagues in this community, supported oftentimes by philanthropy, but also volunteer work and other wonderful inputs from our community. And today's guest is no exception. Suzi, I'm so glad that you are here representing Impact 100 of Indian River County. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Vicki. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to be having a conversation with you because you're such a wonderful leader in our community.
Well, thank you. I just do what comes naturally, and sometimes it turns out good, and other times, oh, well, I'm just me, you know.
Right.
But Impact 100 certainly has a very favorable history for Treasure Coast Community Health. But before we go into that, for some folks that may not have been aware that we have an Impact chapter here, would you like to talk a little bit about Impact 100?
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
Impact is part of a global organization, Impact 100, throughout the United States and as far out as Australia.
Oh.
And it's a group of any woman over the age of 18 who has a big heart and would like to be involved in a collective philanthropy. And I think that's what really sets us apart and excited me about joining the organization was my husband and I make our annual contributions to a variety of organizations, but we as a couple cannot make the impact that we make as Impact 100 does. We have, for every 100 members, we award $100,000 grants to local Indian River nonprofits.
And that is so important because you're right. It's that collective philanthropy.
Yep.
For a nonprofit, whether you've been in business for a couple of years or, in our case, over 30 years, trying to accumulate the same number of funds for a major project, something that will create impact, not just replacing your furniture or your equipment, but something that you want to try as a program or that you are wanting to expand as a known program. It's a really tough endeavor. So the appreciation for this group is huge.
And we get that feedback from the nonprofits that it's helped us to really think outside of the box and to come together as a team to dream big and then to put those dreams into reality because we can provide the funds to back up that dream.
Well, and initially, we got involved with our Oslo location, actually. When we were building that, we used every bit of resource that we could, only to find out that the regulations were changing in dental services. And in the past, there were a lot of silver amalgam. That's a hard word for me to say. Basically, the stuff that comes out of your fillings, the silver, those had to be disposed of in a different way. And while that sounds like an easy
hazardous waste?
Yes. And so it required a capital investment. And at the same time, we were looking at some other things to enhance our dental services at Oslo that hadn't been part of the dreaming that because during that phase, it was, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. You know, we have to stick with, you know, the original plan to build a building in South County. And so you all came to the rescue to us in the way of a grant opportunity. And so that was our first exposure to Impact 100. And needless to say, I've been a charter member ever since, as well as a volunteer.
You've been a very good member. Yes,
well,
you have.
It's not just giving of your treasure, that $1,000, but also your time and your talent, because as this organization has grown, You are now at how many members?
About 460.
Yes. So that's 460 diverse women, often professional, very strong leaders, very opinionated, with good experience and good rationale behind it. It is quite the organization, though, to bring their talents together, their experiences, their knowledge, their opinions. And so that organization in its growth has really blossomed as well, not just in terms of the number of $100,000 grants that you give, but the things that you are doing, which includes visioning. Took me a long time to get there. Helping that organization that thinks that they want to go in one direction, explore it verbally with a number of these experienced gals, invested gals, to pro and con, and have you thought about this and what about that? So before you ever write the grant, you've got a much more solid understanding of what they're looking to do, and they can help clarify their intentions with their board members or their senior staff with you all.
So you went through, did y'all go through visioning this last time?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I think that we're the only impact of all the impacts that has a visioning program. And it really is to, as you said, to help the nonprofit brainstorm their big idea, but also to make sure that they are eligible, because we have very clear guidelines, because we are stewards of $100,000, and of our members, for many, it's hard-earned money.
Yes.
And so we have to be very clear with who is applying that they meet all of our specific guidelines, one of which is all of the money has to be spent in Indian River County. So it has to be very centric focused. And you have to be, have to have been a 501c3, a nonprofit, for at least 3 years, and have audited financials.
Okay.
And as important, you have to prove to us that you can sustain the project after your 2-year grant program is up.
And so all of those resources impressed me as a member as well as an applicant, because, as you say, you know, it's money hard earned for all of us, regardless of what our baseline income is. We have choices about what we do. But like you, I felt that contributing to Impact 100 multiplied my funding as opposed to what my husband and I choose to do each year as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at the other end of visioning, we have the community partners, which I'm sure you've worked with our Community Partners Committee. And that organization, after you receive a $100,000 grant, you become a community partner with us. And they shepherd you through the process for the next 2 years to make sure you're fulfilling the proposal that you presented to us.
Yeah, because sometimes things happen.
Yes, sometimes things do happen.
And then you're like, okay, I said I was going to do this. We're going to do that. But it's not possible in the timeframes we described, as an example.
Well, COVID was a perfect example, particularly when we had projects that included building.
Yes.
And so we had to make some exceptions. But in general, most of our grants get completed. Sometimes they're completed within 6 months. Sometimes it takes the full 2 years. Sometimes there's an extension.
But more often than not, the expectation is that the funds will be completely utilized within that 2-year period.
Within that 2-year period.
So that kind of keeps your organization on track as much as possible.
It does.
Because you do have the check-ins that say, how are you doing?
Yes, it does. And the flip side of that is it keeps our organization new every single year, because we depend on our members for grants. The more members we have, the more grants we can give. And so every year, on February 28th, our membership year ends, and we start all over again.
But we still have a month.
We still have almost 6 weeks
to get folks to think about what an impact they could help make. Because if you have 460, and that's your final number, which I know it won't be, but if it were, the way that this works is that you would then be able to, through a process, and we'll talk more about that, you would be issuing 4 grants, and then that leftover money, there's no partial funding.
The leftover money is divided amongst the merit winners.
Okay.
There is a cap on it that the board decides at after the election.
Okay.
And let's say that we have 460 members this year. Well, let's do 450 because I can divide that a lot easier. And we have $50,000 left over, and we have two merit finalists. They would each receive maybe $25,000, which is a nice chunk of change.
It is. And I have talked to the folks that have been merit winners, and by and large, they use that money to do the groundwork for the project they were actually asking for support of.
Yep.
And many of them reapply the next year, and a sizable number get
that is
awarded
absolutely
the next
correct.
year.
Get awarded the next year.
Mm-hmm. So it's a wonderful thing. But, one of the things that it took me a bit to figure out, because every organization that funds, whether it's United Way or Johns Island Community Service or some of the other great organizations in town, they all do their process slightly different. So can you describe, once someone has their visioning and decides to put in an application, you actually have a teaching session for interested parties, right?
We do. We have several. We want our nonprofits to be successful. So we start with a grant writing workshop in June or July to help them understand how to write a grant for us. Okay. Then in September, we have a nonprofit information session, which I wish we could come up with more clever names. But at that event, we go through the actual application process and help to manage expectations. Then we have the grant. The grant applications are due around the 1st of November. What makes Impact so unique from all the other funders in Indian River County is every single member of our organization gets a vote as to how the money is going to be distributed. So whether you give $1,000 or $10,000 to Impact 100, you have the same vote. And we decide where the money goes. And this was kind of the impetus for how Impact got started. Ellie McCoy had started the Women in Philanthropy to help educate women on how to be more strategic in their giving. It was during a time period, it was 16, 17 years ago, which doesn't seem like that long ago. But, women were planning the luncheons. They were planning the galas. They were planning the outings. But they were not well represented on the boards that were making the decisions on how the money was being spent. And so Ellie came up with this Women in Philanthropy. And then they thought, okay, where can we go to the next step? And ironically, one of our members was on an airplane and opened up a People magazine, and there was a story about Impact 100.
No kidding. I'd never heard that.
Yes, it's just serendipity.
Wow.
And so they called Cincinnati, where the headquarters of the Global Impact is, and they connected us with, it was either Pensacola or Tallahassee. And someone came to speak, and that was in October of 2008, I think. Okay. And their goal was to give out one grant that year. And they came up with two $110,000 grants by
Wow.
April. Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't be surprised, because that's the kind of women that we have in this community.
It is the most generous community. It's the 7th most generous community in all of Florida.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to stop on that happy note.
And talk about your generous sponsors.
Yeah, that's right. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Treasure Coast Community Health in-house pharmacies have the lowest prices in Indian River County, even lower than big box pharmacies. Taking your medication as prescribed leads to better health. Affordable medicine makes it easier. Treasure Coast Community Health patients can pick up medicine as they leave the office or use free delivery and mail order services. Pharmacists are always available to answer questions. Switch to TCCH pharmacies. Save money, stay healthy. 772-257-8224 and ask about our price match.
Vendors, come be a part of the Downtown Country Hoedown, a big old gathering of folks with a hankering for what you're selling. We've got space for you, vendors. We've got live country music that'll have you scooting your boots on the street, plus midway games, a mechanical bull, line dancing, beer, food, contests, and prizes. All we're missing is you. Vendors, join us at the Downtown Country Hoedown, Friday, January 31st in downtown Vero Beach. Contact Evergreen Media at egreenmedia.com.
Right now at Sunshine Furniture, it's New Year sale time. Save up to 50% on selected closeout styles of Lloyd Landers, Berlin Garden, Capri, Universal Coastal Living, Four Seasons, and lots more. Sofas, dining sets, patio groups, chaises, umbrellas, occasional chairs, bedroom sets, coffee table, lots of pieces on sale now for inside and out. We're your local Tommy Bahama and Lexington store where you can create an island paradise and make your life one long weekend. Sophisticated looks with a mix of coastal and Caribbean style, Tommy Bahama Home has everything you need for your Florida living. Also, all pictures, lamps, and accessories are half price. Visit Sunshine Furniture now for our January sale. Sunshine Furniture, $12.95 US 1 in the Publix Plaza, Vero Beach. Visit our website at sunshinefurniturecasual.com. Also, don't forget to shop our outlet and sales center just across the street.
Sunshine Furniture, the best in every way.
And welcome back to Community Conversations. If you're just joining, my name is Vicki Soule. I am the CEO of Treasure Coast Community Health. And one of my greatest pleasures, besides making sure people get connected for the health that they need, the health care that they need, is being able to talk to so many wonderful people around our community that improve our mental health, our physical health, and all the things that we call paradise. And so I have Miss Paradise here, Suzi McCoy, from Impact 100, and we've been talking about the origins of Impact 100 in our county, and certainly with a bent towards the fact that we add membership during this time of the year up until the end of February. And at that point, the membership is pretty solid because one of the things that then happens is the vetting of the applications and the voting by all members in April. Still in April?
It is still in April.
Okay. Everything changes.
One of our most exciting events happens, I think it's the 5th of March, and anyone is invited to this. It's our Meet the Finalist.
Ah, yes.
And that's when the finalists for the upcoming voting season are revealed. It's our big reveal.
Yes.
And we reveal how much we'll be able to give in grants as well. And the finalists will give a short 5-minute presentation about their project. So that's a great opportunity for someone who is interested in Impact 100 to come and really see us in action. And then
where will that be?
That will be held at the Heritage Center.
Ah, yep. Wonderful.
Yep. That's a great venue for us, and it's easy for people to find, and it's centrally located.
Okay, and that's March 5th.
That's March 5th. That's the first Wednesday of March.
Okay. And it is on your website.
It is on the website because sometimes I get my dates wrong.
Don't we all?
So our website is impact100ir.com. And you can find on the events page any of our events, and you can sign up for all of our events, excluding our annual meeting, which is in April, and that is specifically for members only, because that's when we vote.
So I know that a lot of the gals that belong to Impact 100 are so thrilled with it that they do certain events and really inform people all year long, because as much as we think that it's a very stable community, and it is, we are seeing growth. Yes. We are seeing new people come in, and we welcome them, but we don't want them to just wait until March. And so you mentioned something about meeting at Tides every other.
The Tides has been so generous to us. They open up for us exclusively for lunch.
Oh, wow.
We're the only luncheon venue. They don't serve lunch any other day of the week, except for the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
Second Wednesday of the month, excuse me.
Okay.
And we bring in a speaker who is a previous grant recipient to give us an update on what impact their $100,000 made on their grant. And this year we had the Treasure Coast, this past week, Treasure Coast Food Bank. And she talked, like you did, Vicki, about how we were seed money for them to start their program. And without us, she doesn't know where their organization would have gone. And we have found that so many organizations have found that getting an Impact 100 grant is like getting a seal of approval. And once you've gone through our vetting process, which is very strenuous.
It sure is.
Yes. Let me
But
talk
rightly so.
Yes. Well, it's $100,000. That's a big chunk of change, and it's from our members.
Right.
And so we have to be good stewards of that money. So once an application is submitted, it goes through a reading table of all the grant panel chairs and some board members and financial analysts. So we comb through the financials. I don't, because that's just so out of my sandbox. So we look through the financials for any red flags. And then we make sure that the grants meet our basic criteria. Then those grants are divided up into grant panels. They have a chair and they have a financial advisor, and then there are anywhere from 4 to 8 members on a panel. And they comb through each grant and they do site visits. And then they decide whether or not this grant will go to the next phase, the third phase, which is the final selection process.
Okay.
And that's when the finalists then come to the members of the board, the executive committee, and other grant panel chairs to present the project.
And it's a fairly large group, as I recall.
It is. And it can be, I've had to make those presentations, and it can be a little intimidating.
Just a little. Even for an experienced individual.
Even for an experienced person. And then we vote. We have a system of 952, 975, where we give them numbers, and we eliminate those that did not.
So like the Olympic scoring.
Like the Olympic scoring, because this is the Olympics of Indian River funding.
Yes, it is.
And then the finalists are announced in early March, 2 days later. And then we have our finalists. We've instituted, I don't know when you did it. Did y'all have to do videos?
Yes.
It may
the
have
last
been during
time.
COVID, yeah. So we found that to be very helpful for our members because we vote via either 2 ways, online, if you're not here in person, or you come to the annual meeting. And Leslie Swan sets up the voting booths. And
She's awesome.
she's awesome.
Her team is just right on it.
Right on it. And everybody loves voting in person.
Yes.
And so then it goes to the members to vote. And again, it's the top. If we have 4 grants this year, we hopefully have 5. We have 5 grants to give. The top 5 votes get the.
So, ladies, here's my pitch. I've given it to other folks as well. You cannot invest your money any better than in this. There is no doubt that every time we vote, we have our personal favorites. But the reality is that you're always going to get at least one of what you just so much wanted to fund yourself.
Yes, yes. I've been brought to tears because one of the ones that I wanted. And that's the thing about collective giving. You have to be a
little flexible.
You have to be flexible. Thank you for that word. You have to be flexible, and you have to know that you're part of a group, and you're not always going to get your way.
But the vetting is so important. It doesn't matter if that strikes a chord in my heart or not. I know that the vetting process has been legit, and it's had so much brain power going through this process that there's no such thing as a bad pick in this. And so, again, check your checkbooks, look at whether you've got some mandatory retirement money you got to get out. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but it's so important that we do this.
Yes, and if you want more information, I encourage you to go to our website, impact100ir.com, and you can read about our history, and you can fill out an application and join. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, and it will spark creativity in the businesses that you know as well for the next round. So, again, thank you, Suzi, for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Vicki. This was so much fun.
Well, you know that I rarely have a struggle with words, but this one chokes me up. So, ladies and gents, thank you so much for your patience and listening to us again, eavesdropping on our conversations, and I will see you next week. Have a good evening.